From deep-cut Easter eggs to Lego referencing themselves and updates Lego made that you didn't even know about. These are 64 Lego things that you definitely missed. Up first, did you know that you can find power stars in the Lego Mario question block set just like you can in the games? There are 10 you can find in total, and they're all used as play features with the Mario figure that comes with the set. But one of them is in a super weird place. Look at this picture of the set before it's finished. Can you see it? The star is right above this black beam, and it's super tiny. This is by far the hardest one to find in the whole set, but there are over 70 Easter eggs in the X-Men Mansion set, so let me show you some at a rapid-fire pace. This picture is based on a super famous cover from the Days of Future Past comic. 2 turrets are sitting in the front lawn, which was first seen in the Pride of the X-Men TV show. The fire exit is damaged by someone named Pyro, who funnily enough is a mutant with a fire power. The Nightcrawler has a poster which oddly looks like a circus poster, which makes a lot of sense since he was raised in a circus. And a golden pyramid can be found under the floor, which is a reference to the apocalypse made by N. Sahab Noor, otherwise known as the first of the X-Men. Obviously, there are way more that I could talk about, but this next Easter egg is super weird. The next Easter egg is in the Monkey Kid Megapolis City set. Remember how Lego used to make wooden toys way back in the day? Well, do you also remember that one of their first toys was this wooden duck? Well, take a look at this. A micro version of it is just chilling in the Megapolis City set. It doesn't end there though. There's also a 2x2 tile piece on the back of the duck. But what exactly is this? Well, Monkey Kid himself actually drew this picture in the TV show. So not only is this a 2-in-1 Easter egg, but it represents the bridge between the show and Lego. Lego is really good at bringing stuff over from shows or movies to their sets, and one with a super famous and accurate Easter egg is the Lego Harry Potter Gringotts Bank set. I talked about the Easter egg in Bellatrix Lestrange's vault in a different video, but this time I want to talk about the Sorcerer's Stone. In the Harry Potter universe, we find out that the stone is being kept in Vault 713. Only a very select group of people have this information, but if you go to that vault in the Lego set, you can find the stone sitting right there behind a wall. Now, Hagrid did end up moving it in the movies, but come on, this is a Lego set. We can give them some wiggle room. Another set with an Easter egg like this is the Jurassic Park T-Rex Rampage set. Just like every other set in Lego's catalog, there are tons you can find, but the one I want to tell you about is actually hidden really well. In the movies, we find out that the only reason humans were able to bring dinosaurs back to life was by using frog DNA. So it makes a lot of sense why you're supposed to put a frog piece inside of the dinosaur. Just like that Pink Zane minifigure I talked about a few videos ago, if you don't have a ton of Jurassic Park knowledge, this would have went right over your head. Now, most Easter eggs can only be made once, but Lego actually reused the same Easter egg twice. Almost. In my first video on Lego Easter eggs, I showed you how Finn got the blood on his helmet censored in the Lego Star Wars The Force Awakens video game. Well, since then, another Lego video game has been released with the exact same movie in it. So how did Lego censor it this time? Well, instead of a green splotch, they had Finn find some cake on the battlefield, eat it, and get it all over his helmet. Pretty clever, Lego. However, it's not as clever as the reference you hid in the Lego Modular Police Station set. There seems to be a crack in the wall on the back of the station, which is a little weird, but I guess it's nothing out of the ordinary. However, there's a small cell on the other side of this crack with a bed and a toilet. And if you lift the bed up, not only is there a spoon hiding underneath it, but there's also a tunnel that leads to the crack on the outside. But the coolest part about this Easter egg isn't the crack, or the bed, or even the tunnel. It's the spoon. This is a direct reference to The Shawshank Redemption, one of the best prison movies ever made. Lego always does a super good job with Easter eggs like this. Whether it be the X-Men Mansion, Gringotts Bank, or the police station, they're super good at it. And another great example is in the Lord of the Rings Shire set. One of the most well-known scenes in those movies is when Gandalf throws the letter in the fire and reveals the One Ring to Frodo. So, of course, Lego had to bring that over to the set. But wait a minute, where's the ring? This is just an envelope. Well, just turn the knob on the side, and voila! The ring reveals itself to you just like it did for Frodo in the fireplace. It's super sick, but this next Easter egg is for all my Spider-Man fans. The Ultimate Bridge Battle set has a lot more Easter eggs than the 1962 piece that I covered in a different video, and I think you're really gonna like them. For starters, there's a room at the bottom of the bridge sealed off by some webs, but if you look at the top of one of them, you'll find a camera conveniently pointing at the room. This is probably a reference to the fact that Peter Parker was giving the Daily Bugle all of the pictures of Spider-Man for the newspaper, but it doesn't end here. One of the walls at the bottom of the bridge has Peter Parker's and Gwen Stacy's initials inside of a heart. Obviously, this is a reference to their love, but some fans think that this is a cryptic message telling us that this is the same bridge Gwen died on. That's just a conspiracy, but this next one was confirmed by the set designer. There's a sign for Route 25 on the bridge, but this highway is a lot more significant than you might know. It goes from the eastern tip of Long Island all the way down into Hell's Kitchen, which is exactly where Daredevil is from. A lot of stars had to align for this Easter egg to work, but like I said, the set designer confirmed it, so that's why the sign is even in here. Remember that wooden duck micro build from the Monkey Kid set? Well, you're gonna need to for this next Easter egg, because Lego actually does this a lot. I showed you something similar in the Lion Knight's Castle set, but did you know that you can find 2 micro builds in the A-frame cabin set? The first one is the typewriter piece on the desk to reference the typewriter set, which honestly is a bit of a stretch. But this is absolutely a mini version of the Lego Ideas treehouse. There's no denying that. It's not often that Lego includes a reference not everyone is sold on. But for a specific one in the Friends apartment set, if Lego didn't tell us about it, I'm not sure how many people would have actually believed it. Monica's kitchen has a giant turkey sitting on the table, and since it can't fit on her head like it did in Season 5, Episode 8, it definitely isn't a reference to that. Luckily for us, Lego listed a bunch of references for this set on their website, so we were able to find out that this turkey pays homage to all the Thanksgiving episodes Friends did over the years. But this isn't the only reference on Monica's kitchen table. There's also a brick-built version of Phoebe's dollhouse when it got lit on fire. It's by far one of the most well-known things to happen in Friends, so of course Lego had to include it. Not every Easter egg has to be based on something else though. Lego can get pretty creative with Easter eggs, and a good example of that is in the Minifigured tribute set. It has some pretty sick Easter eggs, like the blue wristband that represents the one you get when you tour the Lego house. But I want to show you something on the inside of the set. Pirates are almost always sailing the high seas, so what's the one thing they'd probably be thinking about while they're out there? If you need a little help, the island on the inside of the minifigure's head might be able to give you the answer. This is what I meant by Lego being creative. Clearly, they never forget even the most important details, and it's obvious when you see what they did in the Sesame Street set. This set is pretty small, so there isn't a whole lot they could have done here, and unfortunately, not every character from Sesame Street got a minifigure in this set. But like I said, Lego never misses the details. So not only is there a painting of Abby Cadabby on one of the walls, but they even added Oscar the Grouch's worm Slimy right outside of his trash can. There's also a big tile piece for Biff and Sully's construction company, a picture of Zoe and Rosita right next to Elmo's bed, and Big Bird's drawing of Mr. Hooper. Basically, the whole gang is here, which is especially good since this set was obviously made for kids. Moving on from that though, there's actually a really cool Easter egg in the mini Disney Castle set. Fun fact, the Disney Castle is actually the same one used in Cinderella. So technically, this is a set about Cinderella's castle. I'm sure the Disney superfans already knew that, but Lego lets you know this fact in a super subtle way. If you take the top off of the central walkway, you'll find a tile piece of her glass slippers hiding on the inside. There's also a tile piece of the castle from what looks to be the intro to Everything Disney, which is a really nice touch. Obviously, these Easter eggs are pretty hard to find, but you know what set has them front and center? The Krusty Burger from The Simpsons, which is pretty crazy since this set literally just came out. The first few are on the back of the store. There's the obvious graffiti tag from Bart, but then there's also a sticker promoting Sideshow Bob's campaign for mayor. So of course Lego had to accompany this with a rake. Then there's a missing poster for the Krusty Burglar, which of course is referencing the scene where a random kid in the crowd screams, "Stop! Stop! He's already dead." But the best one by far is at the grease trap. In season 10, Homer starts a business selling grease, and the grease he was selling came straight from the Krusty Burger. He used a shovel to load the grease into Marge's car, which unfortunately isn't in this set, but the reference still holds true. Now for this next one, I want to take you to the Monkey Kid City of Lanterns set. Since this is a city, you already know there are tons of Easter eggs here, but the one I want to show you is actually really hard to spot. Because the city is so big, there's an information center that people can use to find their way around. And I know it sounds crazy, but the Easter egg is actually hiding right here in plain sight. See this guy on the tile piece with an eye on his head? Well, he's actually the Infomaniac from the Lego Island video game. This is one of the most subtle references I've seen in Lego, so if you knew who this guy was, give yourself a pat on the back. Anyways, the next Easter eggs I want to show you are in the Sanctum Sanctorum set. Say that 5 times fast. Since this is a Marvel set, of course you're gonna have your pictures of Doctor Strange and ads to join the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But not only does this set have a crazy play function, but it also has a super sick Easter egg similar to the Route 25 one in the Bridge Battle set. Right next to the ad for S.H.I.E.L.D., there's a giant portal that only experienced sorcerers can access. Once inside, you'll find some of Strange's most powerful artifacts, like the Book of Cagliostro, guarded by golden chains and the Time Stone. But the Easter egg is way cooler than this. At the top of the building, there's an ad for Captain America's exhibit at the Bricksonium Museum. Now, this may seem like nothing, but let me tell you why it's so cool. First of all, this is a direct reference to this exact exhibit in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier movie. But best of all, the Sanctum Sanctorum is in New York City, the same place the Smithsonian Museum is in real life. But now, let's talk about the Luxo Jr. set. Inside the light bulb section of the Pixar lamp set, designers hid the Pizza Planet truck, which is actually an Easter egg inside of an Easter egg. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the Pizza Planet truck is in almost every Pixar movie since Toy Story. For some reason, it's become Pixar's Easter egg of choice, so you can find it in literally every single one. It shows up in Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, and even Brave, so Lego took that idea and hid it inside the lamp. But this lamp set has way more than just this one reference, because not only does this set have the Pizza Planet truck, but it also has a bunch of Pixar characters hidden inside of it too. These 4 builds make up the base of the ball the lamp sits on, but if you notice, all of these are actually references to different Pixar characters. The first ones are Woody and Buzz from Toy Story, the second ones are Sully and Mike from Monsters Inc., the third ones are Alfredo and Remy from Ratatouille, and the last ones are Carl and Russell from Up. But once you build both halves that make up the ball, there are more references to different characters. One half has references to different characters from Inside Out, and the other has references to The Incredibles. But even after all of these, we're still not done. Inside the base of the lamp, there are so many discrete references that I don't even know all of them. The black, orange, and white bricks reference Nemo, and the round plates next to it reference Joy from Inside Out, but I have no idea what the rest of them are. I think the red 2x4 or the tile next to it reference Lightning McQueen, but other than that, I have no idea who these other pieces reference. So if you do, let me know down in the comments. But while we're on Pixar references, we might as well do 2 more from the Wall-E and Eve set. There's nothing special on the outside, but if you've seen Wall-E, you know what we're looking for is on the inside. In the movie, Wall-E spends all of his time compacting trash into perfect cubes and making giant skyscrapers out of them. And in this Lego set, you can actually find one of these cubes inside of Wall-E. And again, if you've seen the movie, you already know it's inside Eve. When you open her up, you'll find a nice little plant, which is literally the only reason the plot of the movie happened in the first place. So there's no way Lego could have left it out. Enough Pixar references though. Let's move on to the Monkey Kid Megapolis City set, so I can show you something that definitely doesn't belong there. Now, this set has references to a bunch of different themes, but most of them are in places where you can actually see them, except for one. You have to take some pieces off to find it, but once you do, you'll find a Bionicle mask hidden underground. But why is it there? Well, this mask in particular was worn by Onua, the Toa of Earth, so it makes sense why his mask would be buried underground. If you know anything about the Monkey Kid theme though, especially when it comes to this set, you know that there are way more references than some random Bionicle mask. There's a Lego vending machine, the brick-built duck referencing the wooden one Lego used to make, and way more. But there's a really subtle one hiding in plain sight around the elevator. And no, I'm not talking about the giant picture of the classic astronaut, I'm talking about the blue piece right above it. The minifigs on this piece don't really look like minifigs, and that's because it's referencing a set from before minifigs even existed, set 200 from the Building Set with People theme. Trust me, I know how weird that sounds, but that's actually the name of the theme. Since there are so many cool things in this set though, I might as well show you a few more. One of the stores in this city is actually a record store, and while the first thing you thought of was probably the Barbershop Quartet from Ninjago, unfortunately they're nowhere to be found. What you can find though is a record inspired by the Jazz Quartet set from 2022. This tile has the exact same design as the box for the set, so you know for sure it's them. The last thing I'll show you in this set is just the sign by the Ferris wheel warning all minifigs about the ride. I guess even if you have stud holes in your butt, you still gotta be careful on rides. Moving on from that though, I want to talk about the Shadow the Hedgehog set from the Sonic theme, because this set's actually got way more secret stuff than you think. First off, there are 3 shiny golden rings hidden inside the base that you'll never see once you build the set. This is obviously a reference to rings in the Sonic games, which is basically the entire point of the series. When you get hit in game, you lose all of your rings, so it makes sense why they're stored inside of the set. I mean, it's only right. But that's not the only thing hiding inside. If you look inside Shadow's head, you'll find a Chaos Emerald, which is another massive reference to the Sonic games. Chaos Emeralds are the most powerful objects in the Sonic universe, and collecting all 7 of them usually unlocks some kind of super form or secret ending. In Shadow's case, collecting them lets him turn into Super Shadow, giving him incredible power. Shadow's entire character revolves around Chaos Emeralds. His origin story involves them, his powers come from them, and his whole game is about collecting them. So Lego putting one inside his head is perfect. But along with this emerald, there's also a red crab inside his head, and this one represents the enemy Crabmeat from the Sonic games. Crabmeat is one of the most iconic villains in the series, and he's been around since the very first Sonic game back in 1991. It's not the most threatening enemy by any means. It just walks back and forth and shoots little projectiles at you. But it's definitely memorable, because it's one of the first enemies you see in the Green Hill Zone. But Shadow isn't the only Sonic set with multiple references, because the Team Sonic command truck is hiding a few too. This set just came out in August of this year, and just by looking at it, you can tell this truck is absolutely decked out. It's got a dining area, a ping pong table, and a gaming room with some huge speakers. But look, the last person who was playing video games was playing Sonic Adventure 2, because the Chaos Garden is literally right there on screen. This was such a freebie for LEGO that honestly, I would have been a little disappointed if they didn't do something like this for this set. But remember, I said there are multiple references in this set, so let me show you the other one. The license plate for the truck says Green Hill 1991, which is obviously referencing the year the first Sonic game came out. It's pretty basic, but it's another one that we're all happy to see. Another video game set with a cool Easter egg is the Isabel's House Visit set from the Animal Crossing theme. Now, in my opinion, this theme doesn't get as much love as it should, probably because most of the sets are so small. But that doesn't stop the designers from trying their hardest to make them fun to build. Just like how Sonic revolves around rings, Animal Crossing revolves around these things called bells. You can get them from selling stuff, hitting rocks, shaking trees, and a bunch of other ways. But this set conveniently has a tree in the front yard, and if you look up top, you'll find a tile version of a bell just sitting there. This same Easter egg is also in the Able Sisters clothing shop set, so clearly whoever designs these sets wants the builder to be rich in Animal Crossing money. Moving on from that though, did you know there's an Easter egg in a set from the Creator Expert theme? It's hard to believe since this set is meant to be super serious and for adults, but there's one hiding in the roller coaster set from 2018. If you look at the box for this set, there's a little orange hat flying off of someone's head in the top right corner. Now, you might think this is just there for aesthetics, but when you build the set, LEGO has you put the hat on the ground. I know it's not even close to the same spot, but this is a fun little Easter egg that's actually pretty hard to notice, and that's what makes it so good. Getting back to video game references, there's a minifigure in the Mecha Team Leader set that has an actual emote from Fortnite. Now, I know you think this is literally impossible, since pretty much every emote is someone dancing, but the Mecha Team Leader minifigure comes with an I Love Mecha tile piece. You'd have to be pretty OG to remember this one, but this is an emote from Chapter 1, Season 9, when the Mecha Team Leader fought the Devourer. At the time, this was a pretty big event, so Epic Games put 2 emotes in the shop, one for each team. So of course, the Mecha Team Leader minifig had to represent. But Fortnite's not the only franchise with video game references in LEGO form. The new Death Star set has a mini kit hidden inside of it, and if you've ever played any of the LEGO Star Wars video games, you know exactly what this is. Mini kits are little Easter eggs you can find throughout the levels, and collecting all of them unlocks special bonus content like ships or characters. They're the entire reason people replay these games over and over again, going back through levels in free play mode to find all the hidden spots. So LEGO including a mini kit in the Death Star set is a perfect nod to the video games. But the mini kit isn't the only video game reference in this set. The Death Star also has every single stud color from the LEGO games. In the games, different colored studs are worth different amounts of money, and since there's a mini kit here, that means there have to be studs too. But the Death Star isn't even the only set with something like this though, because the Arkham Asylum set has them too. Just like in the Death Star, you can find studs of every color hiding in a dumpster out back. Unfortunately, this set doesn't come with a mini kit like the Death Star, but there is something really cool hiding underneath the studs. There's a version of Batman number 9 hidden under there, which is a reference to the actual comic book. Batman number 9 was published in 1942 and featured early stories of the Dark Knight. Obviously, DC is based on its comic book series, and there are a million different DC and Marvel sets with references to the comics in them. But this is one of the only ones I know of with an actual comic book in LEGO form. If you know of any others, let me know in the comments, but since this is a first for me, I was really excited to see it. Going back to Star Wars for a second, the Dark Falcon set has a reference that most people probably missed. Obviously, the main attraction of this set are the minifigures. I mean, there's a Darth Jar Jar and a Jedi Vader, but Luke actually has something pretty cool. He's holding a carton of blue milk. This is a reference to the gross-looking blue milk that Luke drinks at his aunt and uncle's farm on Tatooine in A New Hope. It's one of the most memorable drinks in all of Star Wars, and it's become a huge meme on the internet. Disney even sells blue milk at Galaxy's Edge in their theme parks, so LEGO adding it to the Dark Falcon is very fitting. But now, let's talk about the Assembly Square set, because there's a hilarious joke hiding in here too. There's a lot going on in this set, but the thing I want you to know about is that it has a dentist's office, and in the window of that office, there's a sign that says "Prevent Yellowing" with a giant tooth. Now, I don't know if this is a joke about certain pieces yellowing over time, or a sarcastic joke about yellow Lego heads, or something else, but either way, it's pretty funny. Anyways, the next set with some cool references I want to show you is the Game Boy set. This set actually just came out, so of course, die-hard fans had to find everything they could in it. One of the coolest ones to me was the serial number. Now, usually when Lego hides something in a serial number or a license plate, it's pretty easy to figure out, but this one genuinely took me a second. If you get rid of the G and split the serial number even down the middle, you get 1989 and 0421, and this is actually the exact date the Game Boy first came out in Japan, April 21st, 1989. Since the numbers weren't separated, it took me a second to realize what was going on, but all that means is that it's a great little Easter egg. But now, let's switch gears and talk about some insane updates that Lego's made over the years. The complete takeover of stickers. This is everyone's least favorite part of a Lego set. You try your best to get it on straight, just like how it is in the instructions, but it's always just a little bit off. These things have gotten way more common in today's sets, but it wasn't always like this. Lego fans all over the internet talk about how it feels like there are way more stickers in sets than there ever used to be, but finding the actual evidence is pretty difficult. The best I got is this picture of a tile piece that I don't even know the name of, but it's a perfect example of what's been going on. Another element that's been phased out over the years are wires, but this one is probably for the best. These days, most of the motors are battery powered, but back in the day, they had to be hooked up to a power source just so they could run. They were mostly used in the Power Functions theme, and since it started back in 2008, it makes sense why Lego wasn't really making wireless stuff yet. A big change that was hiding right under our noses though, was the disappearance of fabric capes. These things were in basically every set I wanted when I was a kid. Jedis wore capes, and so did superheroes, so I was putting these things on minifigures all the time back in the day. As of recently though, Lego's been starting to phase them out. A bunch of different minifigures have rubber capes now. There's Batman in the Harley Quinn and Mr. Freeze fight set, Magneto in the X-Men Mansion set, and Thor in the Thor vs. Surtur construction figure set. As cool as these pieces look, they kind of limit what Lego's able to do with them. Back in the 1990s, they introduced this multicolored dragon cape in the system theme, which looks sick, but if they tried to do this with the new rubber capes, I feel like it wouldn't look as good. I guess this update is kind of hit or miss, but this next one was an absolute downgrade, no doubt. Do you notice how there aren't really any shiny pieces in Lego anymore? There used to be a bunch of them, on lightsaber hilts, vintage crowns for the castle theme, and even on certain minifigures, but we just don't get them anymore. Luckily, there is an actual explanation for this one. Basically, because the paint Lego was using wasn't the best quality, it peeled off pretty fast. So at one point or another, they just started using a color called metal light gray for silver, and a bunch of different ones for gold. They don't look anywhere near as good, and to be honest, I feel like Lego should have just found a better chrome paint to use. Am I spinning here? I feel like that definitely would have been the better move, but let me know what you think. Moving on from chrome pieces though, Lego actually made a super small update to their bricks somewhat recently. After they patented the stud and tube coupling system in 1958, the bricks were much better at keeping themselves together. But looking at this brick today, something just seems off about it, right? Well, it's because they hadn't added the support beams to the tubes yet. This became very common around 2008, so it makes sense why when I look at bricks that don't have these beams, they almost look naked. Lego doesn't just make tiny updates to pieces though, they do it to minifigures too. Back in the early 2000s, you could buy a magnetic minifigure that didn't have this giant brick podium underneath it. They made a few different sets, but the most popular one was the Lego Batman set. But what was wrong with these minifigures? If they were so cool, why did they end up changing it? Well, the magnets were actually little pieces in the back of the minifigure's legs, and once parents of young kids found out about it, they weren't too happy. Lego had to stop making magnetic minifigures this way because it was a choking hazard, which is honestly a shame. The seamless look these Batman minifigures have compared to the ones we have now is so much better. Depending on what you're looking at, sometimes the old Lego really was just better. And a perfect example of that is what Lego did to the box design for Lego Castle. The castle theme always had a blue sky with clouds in the background on the box. It was a super nice design for the theme, and it was a surefire way to know that you were buying a castle set. Lego Castle has actually been retired since 2016 now, but because of how famous it was, they turned it into a sub-theme of the Icon series in 2022. Now, I don't have any problems with the sets in this sub-theme. In fact, I think the Lion Knight's castle is one of the coolest Lego castles ever, but every set in the Icons theme comes in a blacked out box. Now, they didn't do that for this set in particular, but if you're going to change the design on the box, why not give it the classic blue sky that everyone knows and loves? This change didn't really make sense to me. but LEGO fans had it way worse than this before 1990. This is gonna sound crazy, but LEGO didn't make the first brick separator until that year. So before then, if you had two 1x2 plate pieces stacked on top of each other, you were basically cooked. But even then, we didn't get the one we have now until 2011. For some reason, all they did was change the color a few different times over the years, then come out of nowhere with the orange one in 2011. If you were playing with LEGO before the 90s, you definitely would have noticed this update. So let me show you something I guarantee you haven't noticed. This is a transparent brick. Looks pretty good, right? Well, what if I told you that this is actually an old design, and that most of the transparent bricks these days look like this? Yeah, I know. This downgrade is up there with the chrome change. I mean, why would you want to make transparent bricks less transparent? Now, don't get me wrong, certain sets have bricks that are super see-through, but that's definitely not the case for all of them. I can't lie, I've been hating on LEGO pretty hard with these last few updates, so let me show you one that was actually one of the best moves they've ever made. Obviously, we all know how LEGO instructions work. You look at the page and it tells you what to do. But back in the day, this was definitely not the case. These are a couple pages of instructions for set 948 from 1978. I mean, this is basically a free-for-all. There are a few arrows pointing you in the right direction, but for the most part, you're completely on your own. This isn't even as bad as it gets, though. Let me show you the difference between the original Forest Men hideout set from 1988 versus the remastered one from 2022. These are a few pages from the 2022 version. Nothing out of the ordinary, of course. But look at the pages from the one from 1988. I mean, this is just crazy. The difference between page 2 and 4 is out of this world, and they barely even told you anything. Like I said, this update was 100% needed, so let's take a look at another one. This is a police officer minifigure from 1978, but I bet you already knew that. This guy looks old. There isn't a whole lot going on with this minifigure, so when you compare it to one of the police officers we have today, it's a night and day difference. I'd be super surprised if any of you missed this change over the years, but I had to throw it in here, because imagine LEGO released a minifigure with this amount of detail today. There'd be an entire mob outside their HQ. Something people should riot over, though, is LEGO taking away light-up bricks. Specifically, light-up lightsabers for LEGO Star Wars. I've been a LEGO Star Wars fan my whole life, and I completely missed this update. Back in the early 2000s, they released a special type of Star Wars minifigure. All you had to do was put a stud on the back of the hilt and push the head down. Then the lightsaber would come to life. I genuinely can't believe I missed something as cool as this, especially since I literally could have gotten some when I was a kid. But I guess it just goes to show how sneaky LEGO can be. Another element they added then slowly took away like this were Legoland pamphlets showing off their new sets. I'm not exactly sure when they started putting these in boxes, and honestly, I'm not even sure when they stopped. All I do know is that they did it before and they don't do it now. Pretty much every single one of these pamphlets is considered to be vintage LEGO, which means they probably haven't done it since before the year 2000. These pamphlets had all sorts of cool looking promo for sets that were coming out soon. Like, look at this one I found on eBay. There's promo for sets from a bunch of different themes. Space, pirates, Technic, it's all the classics. This wasn't the only thing that was common with old boxes though. LEGO also used to show off a bunch of different ways to build a set on the box. I'm not talking about a 3-in-1 set though, where the entire point is to build it one way, take it apart, and build it another way with the help of instructions. These builds were put there purely to spark the imagination. These days, it kind of feels like LEGO only makes sets that are meant to be built once, then put on display. But back in the day, they were super dedicated to the play features, and wanted people to make all sorts of cool stuff with their bricks, no matter what the instructions said. We don't really see that too often these days, and I doubt they're ever bringing it back. But if there's anything that LEGO was doing before that they might actually bring back one day, it's what I'm about to show you next. Back in the 90s, LEGO collabed with Kellogg's, the cereal brand. And I'm not too sure what gets put in cereal boxes these days, but back in my day, there was always some cool toy or prize that you had a chance of winning. The only way to find out was to open the box and pray. And back in the 90s, you might have gotten lucky enough to see a polybag for a Toucan Sam set fall out. It wasn't just him though. You also had a chance of winning Tony the Tiger or the Keebler Man. All three of these sets are super uncommon now, and I wasn't even born when they were around. But this is something I could definitely see LEGO coming back to. Something they're absolutely never doing again though is painting directly onto pieces instead of using a print. Let me show you what I mean. Not too long ago, it wasn't uncommon for LEGO to use paint on certain pieces. They did this a lot with head accessories for minifigures, but the most obvious ones were the headdresses in the LEGO Indians theme. This design is clearly painted on, not printed, and it's become so rare that a certain minifigure in LEGO Star Wars is worth an insane amount of money, simply because the headpiece was painted. It's in the Cloud City set, which was already exclusive, so that definitely helps drive up the price. But I'm talking about the Boba Fett minifigure. The design on his helmet was painted on, instead of printed, like how most minifigures were in 2003. This is the only Boba Fett minifigure that has this design style, and because of it, it's worth over $2,000. And the set it's in is worth over $8,000. Like I said though, I don't think they're ever bringing this back. And another thing that's in the same boat are 32 by 32 base plates. At one point or another, LEGO completely phased out adding base plates to their sets, and it's been like this for so long that I bet you didn't even know they did it in the first place. Literally the only theme that still has them is the modular buildings theme, and that's because if they didn't, the sets wouldn't be modular. From the 1970s to the 1990s, LEGO was including these things in a bunch of different sets. It's in the police headquarters from 1979, the Shell service station from 1983, the airport set from 1985, and way more. It's been in 102 different sets in total, most of which were released in that 20-year period. So it's safe to say that if it's not modular, it's not getting one of these base plates. We can all agree that it'd be nice to have a few of these things laying around. But sometimes LEGO makes something super sick, adds it to a few sets, then retires it for good. Back in 1993, they released the Imperial flagship set in the Pirates theme, and as cool as the ship is, I want to focus on just one singular piece. You see this compass right here? It might look like a regular printed compass piece, but it actually works. This was the first set to ever have this piece, but the thing is, only 9 other sets in LEGO history have ever included this piece. The last ones being the Spaniard ship and the pirate battleship in 2001. This piece never got the love it deserved, and as cool as it is, I don't think it ever will. LEGO put this thing in the vault a long time ago, and I doubt it'll ever be featured in a set again. But what update, Easter egg, or small details surprised you the most in this video? Be sure to let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.